great to be down here with a stalwart from the industry, Tom Ross, Group Operations Director for the Pig Hotels and Homegrown Hotels as the group. And I suppose Group Operations Director stands for God, doesn't it? So everything you do is an act of God, is it?
Yeah, they do take the piss. Excuse me, I'll start off on the right foot with that language, sorry.
So we'll hear more about your background in a second. My background, I was at Eurostar early on in my career as Communications Director for 4 years, trying to sort out what was a little bit of a mess at the time. Eurostar used to be known for late trains, dirty trains, kids being stuck in the tunnel on their way to Disney. And over the years, with a great team there, we managed to turn it round into a business that now is functioning brilliantly with new trains and obviously a much better base from St Pancras. And then one day I was in the office and I was phoned by Richard Branson, as you do, and he rang me and asked me to be his communications director, which was a difficult job to turn down. So I did that for 4.5 years at Virgin Atlantic, and then went to set up my own PR agency working in the luxury travel industry. And like many of you here, I'm sure, there are many challenges which we'll talk about and how to hopefully solve them. Tom, your background really has been one of hospitality through and through, because your parents actually used to run restaurants and hotels, is that right?
That's right. I grew up in the hotel industry in Bath. Story has it that my baby bouncer was on the pass in the kitchen, and my cot was in the ladies' loos, but I'm not sure whether that's true or not. But, so yeah, my parents have had hotels and restaurants for a long time. Grew up in that part of the industry in Bath. Didn't study hospitality. I think a lot of people go and think that the route into hospitality is through hospitality, but I'm not one of those who went to study. Sort of did rugby and a bit of geography at university, and then realised I couldn't turn down the opportunity to work in hospitality, so that's where it was kind of born.
So you didn't go to university. Was that an advantage to you?
No, I did go to university, but didn't study hospitality.
Right, okay.
So I don't know. I think, you quite often get the question of whether people should go to hospitality school. Quite often the young kids are asking whether they should go. I think historically people would have gone. Robin Hudson is quite a good example of that, but he went to the Savoy Hotel School, so slightly different. But nowadays, I think I would encourage someone to get into the industry. I think with the kind of debt that you're getting into at university and the opportunities that there are within the industry, I think that there's big questions to be asked about whether you should go and take on 100 grand's worth of debt or whatever it is, or earn a decent amount of money in those 3 years and get some great experience.
So your career really has spanned working at Hotel du Vin.
Yeah.
You started, I think, at the Chicago Rib Shack.
I did many years ago. Yeah.
Is that still going as a brand?
I think yes, it's been reinvented. It's still going again, but in its day was great.
Deep place. Yeah. And then Hotel du Vin, where you worked with Robin Hudson.
Yes, very briefly.
And then
for 18 months. 18 months was kind of a great kind of time to be there. I was lucky enough to be there, and it's really influential in my career. I think we'll probably talk about people and their journeys and so on a bit later. But yeah, certainly a sort of time, a really good time for me.
And then I think you obviously worked in America for a little bit, in California, Napa Valley.
Yeah, I was in the States for nearly 5 years. Worked on the East Coast in the Relais Chateau property, and then was lucky enough to work at a small restaurant called the French Laundry, which is in the Napa Valley. Was there
and really well known and respected. And then you came back to work again for the Pig Group.
Back to work to Robin. So. Again, I think it's quite sort of a seminal time, a point in someone's career where you decide which way to go. I was interviewing at the Four Seasons in Hampshire, the new one there, and I was also back in contact with Robin. And again, we can get back onto people later on. And Robin is the master at keeping in touch with people. Even if you leave the business, he'll keep in touch with you. He'll meet you for a coffee in King's Cross Station when you're back. All these kinds of things, and he just kept me hooked in. And that's when I decided that Hotel du Vin was for me. Sort of turning the tables a little bit, 18 months later, he left me. He sold Hotel du Vin, so I was kind of still left there. Stayed on for another 4 years there and ran Tunbridge Wells. Where did I go? Sorry, Brighton. I was in Brighton, ran Tunbridge Wells, opened Cheltenham. Then worked for a company in Oxford called Mogford. and then got back into the Pig hotels by contacting Robin with a business plan to open a hotel in Bath. I said, what do you think of the hotel? What do you think of the business plan? He said, yeah, I think it looks great. I said, oh, wonderful. Would you like to invest? He said, no. And he said, well, I'm doing the Pigs. And from the outside, I'd always seen the Pig Hotel, the original one in the New Forest. You realise that it's somewhere you really like to work, but there's no real opportunity because you know the person that's managing it, you know the setup of the business. And then he phoned me about 3 days later and said, I couldn't tell you, but we were in the final discussions of closing on the Bath Hotel. Do you want to come join the Pig Group? And so serendipitously, I'm here.
So, and now there are 5 pigs. There are 3 more to come, I think, from 2019 onwards.
Yep.
What is it about the industry that has attracted you for so long? Why did you catch the bug?
Oh, that's a really tough one, isn't it? I think it's certainly down to the experiences that you have. You know, everyone talks about, oh, you've got to be a certain mentality to be in the industry and so on. I think you've got to enjoy people. I think you have to enjoy pleasing people and seeing the look on their face and solving problems and so on. And that's whether you're, a front of house operator, back of house, the kitchen, wherever you are. But for me, it's been down to experience. So at Hotel du Vin, in my first setup there, Robin and Gérard Basset, who is, I'm not sure if any of you know Gérard from the wine world, but is world champion sommelier, master of wine, and so on. And when I was there, 6 of the championship sommeliers from 1998 to 2000 or something like that. Sorry, 1994 to 2000 came from Hotel du Vin. There was this core group of people who were just so excited about wine, and we were lucky to be in a really sort of well thought of group with very dynamic people around. And then, at the French Laundry, you're top of your game, you're world's best restaurant, the restaurant magazine thing that came out 2002, 2003. You're surrounded by people who are just absolutely obsessed about what they do. It can become a little overwhelming, you do need to get out of there. But to be in that environment where you were, if you came in and you weren't, not if you weren't good, because you would learn, but if you didn't care, you were just churned out. It was just like you as a plow come through the field and you just get thrown out the side. Not in a bad way, it just wasn't a place that you wanted to work. But also you meet great people, and I've been very lucky that I've been in 2 or 3 businesses where I've met great people. Hotel du Vin was the same when I came back. There's 5, 6, maybe 7 of us that work for the Pig groups that worked for Robin at Hotel du Vin before. So yeah, there's a huge number of things, aren't there? So loads of food and wine, that generally helps, doesn't it?
So team is really important. This is
my wife in the industry, that's quite important. Yeah.
So team is really important. This is what's coming through. How do you create the culture of a perfect team? Because lots of us who are in small businesses and are running businesses find that a challenge, obviously, because you either, and we'll get onto this, it's either hard to keep people or they're attracted by a competitor, and it can be very difficult. So what's the ultimate way of actually creating that perfect culture?
I'll answer that.
And that perfect team?
I think the first thing to remember is there's never the perfect team. And we tell ourselves this the whole time, and there's never the perfect employee. I think we're really good in our industry of saying, oh, they're not very good. Or they're good at this, but they're not very good at that. It's really, really important that first of all you understand that there's not the perfect employee, there's not the perfect manager. No one in this room is perfect at what they do, and the perfect team hasn't been born yet. So it has to come from leadership. I think there's a lot of talk around, and always has been, about whether you're a manager or a leader. Whether you're very operationally focused or you can see the bigger picture, we do spend quite a lot of time, actually an extraordinary amount of time, talking about our people. And certainly when we're opening new hotels, about trying to match people to people. So your hotel director might be quite a big picture, might be very hospitable, like to be out on the floor, but they need someone below them who is administrative. You need to complement each other's skills. And where we really started to recognise it was in the kitchens. And you promote a head chef because they're a great chef, Why? Who's going to be the next chef? Oh, it's going to be this person. He can run a service like that. The food's always impeccable, so on and so on and so on. But what we don't actually look at is how they manage people. And you sit there a year down the line, and the 35 people who've gone through that kitchen, the food's great, no one ever complains, but it's an absolute bloody nightmare to manage. So
because there's been a huge churn, etc.
Yeah, and so we try and make sure that, while we recognise that chef is a great chef and is inspirational and cooks great food and you're never going to get any complaints, that we then match that with a sous chef that is really able to sort of shore up the shortcomings in that chef, and we try and do it all throughout the business.
So you were telling me earlier that you've just had a people summit, to look into this in greater detail. Now, why did you have the people summit, and what's come out of it? We had
the people summit because of Robin.
Okay.
Robin is the sort of person. I mean, he's a very inspirational leader. He's very, very dynamic. You don't get a huge amount of time to sort of question why something is happening. We're having a people summit. I've hired a theatre in Winchester because it's where I live. Not me, Robin's saying this. And that's in 4 weeks' time. And so suddenly we've got to jump to it. Now, we have the resources to be able to do that. We had to move those resources from other areas slightly. But the reason we had it is, I mean, it was driven by Robin, but his real concern is where we are with staffing in 6 months' time, in 9 months' time, in a year's time. And by we as an industry and we as a business, so we are 4.5 hotels at the moment, and we employ 450 people. In 18 months' time, we're going to have 3 other hotels, so we're going to be up to 750 people. So where do we find 300 staff from in 18 months? And how do we face up to the challenges of, I'm not even going to say the word, but
begins with a B.
The B word. Yeah, how do we face up to those challenges? If they're there, who knows? We still don't know what's going on and all of that kind of stuff. But let's try and focus. Let's try and we came out. It's a kind of quite a sporting analogy, but to control the controllables. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't know what's going to happen there. But what I do know is that there will be a challenge because we can already see that a number of EU staff are going home. You hear that from talking to your staff, as well as hearing it, kind of in the press. So it was that idea to really challenge ourselves, actually, and we've taken the decision to have a person on recruitment and retention. That's their sole job. Do stop me if I'm going on, and we want you to move to another question. But so we took on this challenge of trying to analyse the whole people problem, and we broke it down into two really main parts. It's one, recruitment. How do we go about recruiting these people? How do we go about recruiting the right people? And then how do we retain them? And I'm not going to sit here and say that the pigs are perfect. I can assure you that we're the same as everyone else. We've got bad turnover sometimes. We've got great managers. We've got some managers that don't manage people as well as others. So we have people churning through that business. And I listened to, and at this summit, sorry, I'll jump forward a little bit. At this summit, we had the ex-chair of the British Hospitality Association, a woman called Ufi Ibrahim. So Robin had seen her at an event and said, come down and talk to our senior team. So we had 70 of our senior managers at this event. And her point, one of her points, was that as an industry, we don't collect any data. So we don't know why someone's left. We don't know when they've left. We don't know how long they were really for. As an industry, we don't do that. And many of us just don't have the time. We're head down. We're getting ready for 30 check-ins or 100 people for dinner, and the fish didn't come in. All these kinds of things. And the idea of collecting data on why someone's left is completely alien to us. But it becomes very difficult to make any decisions about what you're going to do. Anyway, we're now in a position where we can collect data. We spent quite a bit of time investing in a recruitment system as well. And we started to see that, that one, the recruitment system wasn't working well. We weren't recruiting well. And then two, we weren't retaining people. So if I said to you we were looking for 300 people for 3 new hotel openings, we were actually looking for 650 people because we lost 300 people over the year from the other hotels. So suddenly we're sitting to ourselves saying, wow, we've got to recruit 650 people in the next 16 months. And that is the problem that our industry has. That anyone in this room that has got 100% retention in the hotel, I'd love to hear from you, because you're obviously doing something brilliantly. But it was about how we can focus on those two main areas.
And presumably that's the same issue that everybody's having. How do you find those people? There's a shortage, or some don't want to go into the industry because it's not attractive enough. So how do you get around that? When you're interviewing somebody, how do you know the cultural fit is right?
We actually decided to take it back a step further than that. And I think, so we put in a new recruitment system, and it spreads out to a number of different recruitment sites. So, I don't know, Indeed, and I can't remember all the other ones, but all the recruitment sites that you would recruit from, and it brings them in. So we're collating quite a lot of CVs, actually. But there wasn't the training in the people that were analysing the CVs to pick the right people. So traditionally, we as operators like to pick CVs of people that we think are the right fit by where they've worked before. And I've seen it time and time again. So, you know, a restaurant manager who's done a bit of recruitment in the past and so on says, oh, they haven't worked at this type of place before, and oh, they haven't done the covers that we do, so they're not suitable. And you haven't even seen them.
Or you pick people that are like you because you think they're going to be easier to manage.
Or you don't pick people that you're challenged by. So someone who's a bit older, who's got a bit better experience than you, and actually you've got no idea that, you know what, they've been through loads, and all they want to do is work a job which they're good at but has much less responsibility. And so there were all these kind of challenges that we had to look at. So that was the first point. The second point was did we understand who was applying to us and where we were applying? So traditionally, our managers are trying to pick from kind of their own generation. We're putting adverts out that say, you know, have you worked in this type of an industry before? We require this type of experience. And actually, when you ask do they culturally fit, we always say, and a lot of us I expect say the same thing, is we can train the skills, you just need to have the right personality. And then when they send their CV and we're like, oh no, they haven't got the right skills. And we wonder why we can't recruit people. So there's this kind of sometimes a glass about face way of recruiting, and we really opened ourselves up to this. We were really honest with ourselves and took ourselves apart, and there wasn't any of this sort of protection of, oh no, but we do that, and no, actually we might do that 90% of the time, but we don't 10% of the time, and if we don't 10% of the time, then we're missing out on a number of good opportunities. And our recruitment person was able to pick out CVs that are being turned down. So she pulled a CV which someone had disregarded, not even phone called, phone screened, and he is now going out to be run the restaurant at our hotel in France. And yet someone had felt that they didn't have the right experience. And so there's a lot of that talk around recruitment. So whether they culturally fit, you have to meet them first. You know, there is that thing about, you know, that we can train the skills, and totally we can train the skills. And, you know, I've worked in this industry for a long time. There are some complex things, but really they're not.
From a productivity point of view, do you tell people quickly that they're no good if they are no good? Does that help improve your productivity? You'd rather have people out of the business who aren't delivering to help improve your productivity? Is it important to say to them, it's just not working, and do that quickly?
I think that is an abdication of responsibility sometimes. And I think it's something that we potentially used to think of, oh, they're not good enough, next. You know, next. There's not this conveyor belt of staff coming through. Even if there were historically for you, and you're lucky enough to have that, I'm sure in 6 months' time there won't be this thing of saying next. No, they weren't right. No, they weren't right. So, firstly, you have to ask yourself the question: did you recruit the right person? If you did recruit the right person, did they get the best start? And, you know, again, we spend a lot of, you know, the next part of what we talk about is our onboarding process. I hate that term. We're trying to think of something else. But
very American.
Oh, it's so dull, isn't it? Yeah. Onboarding. Sounds like they've fallen overboard to start with, doesn't it? But did they get the best start? And what is the best start? And so we wanted to challenge what really is the best start. Is the best start saying, yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, the job's yours. See you at 9 o'clock in the morning in the kitchen. They turn up at 9 o'clock. The chef's not there. They don't really know what they're doing. You know, that is the reality in a number of hospitality businesses around the world, including ours sometimes. You know, I've walked into the kitchen at 7 o'clock in the morning, see some new starter there. I said, what are you doing here? He said, I don't know. Yeah. And, but how far can we challenge that? So, you know, we're starting to think about down to the sort of the minutiae of when we put someone in a staff house, is that room the best fit for them? And we challenge ourselves every day on it because different experiences come up at different times. So this was last week this happened. So a hotel director said, yeah, they've settled in really well. They made really good friends with someone in that staff house, and so it's kind of helped them. And then we started to think, oh, actually, That's true. You know, if you were to be coming over from France, you're 18 years old, you don't know anyone, and you go into a staff house with 4 people that are English, you don't speak their language, they don't speak yours, you're all working odd shift patterns, you're just left in the staff house in the middle of nowhere, they all leave on their days off to go home to their family and you're left alone. Is that the best start? Should we be thinking about moving people around? And then there's also the side of things that, you know, you make up your mind, so the theory says, about whether you want to work a place in the first 3 months. So I reckon it's probably the first week actually, but someone who's they've applied to us, they've made the decision to apply, they want to come and work with us, and then in the first week, they don't really get met. Their rota they started on a Monday, their rota came to them on a Sunday. The staff food on the first day was rubbish. We had to ask them to work an extra hour on the 4th day because we were all a bit short. And then on the 5th day, the chef shouted at them. And those are the things which we realise that it's all the little bits and pieces in someone's employment that makes a difference about whether they're going to stay. And they might only stay for 18 months, but I'd further say them 18 months than 3 months. So in answer to your question, we don't churn them out. Very rarely do we churn them out. Mm-hmm. We would concentrate on making sure we train them properly and understand that everyone is a different individual.
Let's talk about benefits in a second to attracting and keeping good staff. I guess what I always say to my teams is when you're recruiting, if you're actually thinking it's your own money you're spending when you're recruiting someone, it tends to focus their minds much more because then it's as if they're running the business. Yeah. Do you have any tips for that momentum for recruitment and how the people below you are recruiting?
The money one is one we use actually when they're eating food. That's always a good one. You know, like if it's your money on the table, do you be happy with that? We don't necessarily, you know, I think there's too many I hear too many sort of general terms. Oh, it costs £20,000 to replace every new member of staff. I can't really work that figure out in my head, actually, in the hospitality industry, but let's call it, I don't know, 2 or 3 or whatever it might be. But that's not a realistic figure to someone that's working. I think one of the things that we came up with at the end of our summit was that we wanted to be a kind employer. And forget firm but fair. We often hear that. I had a chat with him and I was firm, but I was fair. Well, fair is a little bit subjective. Kind isn't.
And it's in your eyes, not the team members' eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think when we're employing, it's about a connection. It's not about monetarising it necessarily. I mean, the way to really get them to do it is say you're short-staffed, and if you haven't got someone and there's 15 CVs sitting on the computer, then it's going to be you that's working harder. Yeah. And you know, there's this whole thing around. Again, you know, it's all really relevant stuff. I'll be honest with it. You know, at one of the hotels last week, they were complaining that they didn't have anyone. And I said, well, but I've looked at it, and you've got 15 people on the who have applied. Oh, but I was really busy all weekend. We were working.
That's your choice. Yeah.
Or get someone to help you, or communicate. Or there's loads and loads of things. So again, I'd only push the managers by encouraging them to do it in a better way for them rather than.
So how important are the benefits now? Because when you're a business, you face so many costs. It's more competitive out there than ever before. You're finding competitors are perhaps poaching or offering higher salaries, so attracting your people. There's Brexit, dare I mention that. There are other reasons why you can't find enough people. How important are the benefits that you're offering to people, and increasingly, especially a younger generation, are they asking for more and more and more after 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, and then they're going to move on anyway?
Loads of questions in that. Right, I'll try and do them. The benefits is a really interesting one. I don't think people come into our industry thinking of great benefits. I mean, we're not really known for it, and I think we were probably behind the time on it. So we've now introduced things like critical illness, life insurance, all of that kind of stuff. And as you become bigger as a company, those are much more cost effective to put in place. The reality of a staff member taking those up are fairly minimal. Again, ours tends, and we pay it's always quite a sort of, it's a difficult subject. In our industry, the pay is low, and as operators, it's a real burden on our industry. And if you start giving out pay rises left, right, and centre when someone says, I want a pay rise, then it can go it can get difficult quite quickly. So we always try and be a fair payer, but more than that, we try and make sure that it's an enjoyable place to work. I think chucking someone an extra couple of grand doesn't keep them. You'll pay them an extra couple of grand for 6 months until they leave anyway because they don't like it there. So while the pay is important and we do focus on that, it's much more about what else we can offer. And that's not things, it's not giving you stuff necessarily that I can put in your hand. I mean, we do things, they all get their anniversary lunch, they all get 35% off, they all get to stay in the hotels for free. There's loads of kind of stuff around that. We try and do it in different ways. So there are group-wide things like that, but then it's the personal stuff. So we will pay for a case of wine for a sommelier to be tasting for his exams that he's going through. That's a separate thing for that person. We will ensure that our budding entrepreneurs, so we have a group, we have various different groups within the business. Budding entrepreneurs is our kind of, I always understood it when I first started as a management training scheme, and it's not that at all, because they don't have to become managers. It's just about saying to an 18-year-old, we really see something in you, and we're going to expose you to the whole business, and we're going to put you through different areas, and it's a two-year program. But what it means is, very selfishly, is that we get an employee for 2 years rather than 6 months. But actually, they're now our director of revenue. They run one hotel. They are a restaurant manager. In fact, 2 restaurant managers. So we do move them up through. But for instance, with those guys, they get to come to them. They each have a mentor, so it might be me, Robin, David, and some senior people within the business, and they get to kind of come along to our meetings. So Robin will take them to the bank meeting. So as a junior employee, you're going to the bank meeting with the CEO, and that's the kind of stuff that I think really kind of energizes people. The biggest one, and it comes up time and time again for us, is staff food. We did. There's a survey called Best Places to Work or something like that, and it was very useful for the feedback that we got. But the one that we got everywhere was staff food. It's an expected thing in our business. So I've worked in businesses when Hotel de Van was taken over. They took out staff food, and you all had to bring your own food to work. And that caused absolute uproar. But it's simple things like that. You bring in all of your staff, and they all work really hard, and then you put out some rubbish staff food in front of them. Well, that's quite a good way to ruin their day. And so those are the sorts of things we focus on, rather than, top salesman trip to Miami or something.
Is it consistent? Do you offer the same things, whether people are front of house, back of house, back
staff
office?
Food or
quite fantastic staff food. But in terms of benefits that they're given, or do those front of house? Because obviously when you're running shift systems, it's much more difficult to give people days off for a birthday, for example. Or
we do that.
Duvet days, as they know.
I think you have to commit to doing it. You either have to sit there and say, we're going to continue as we are. We're the hotel industry, and no one gets their birthday off, no one gets Christmas off. You can't have any holiday. If people can't have the holiday, then you haven't got the right number of staff. And so we're now in the other way of doing things. So we're saying, there's a traditional one of you can't take time off when it's busy. Well, why not? Why? You should have the right number of people that you've got. Because now you're having to do something like the restaurant. I think you've got to have something like 2 people off every couple of weeks to make sure that everyone gets through the holiday or something like that, isn't it? So otherwise, if you're not spreading it apart, then you're struggling to get through that. I forgot your question, actually. I'm just rabbiting on.
Well, it was more around the sort of benefits that you can give people that make a real difference.
Oh, yes, that was it, exactly. Sorry. So, but the other really big one is and I know the third part of your question, wasn't it? It was about what people are expecting nowadays. It's about there's an expectation of a work-life balance now. I'm sure some of you around this room are brilliant. We sometimes are not, about giving people a rota 3 days before they're supposed to work the next week. It's quite classic in our industry. How do you feel as someone who gets their rota 3 days before? You feel as though you don't know what's going on, you feel a bit rubbish. How do you feel as though someone who's got the next 2 months' rotas laid out? You feel wonderful. And as hoteliers and operators, we sit there saying, oh, no, there's no way I can give a rota 2 months out, because I don't know what the business is. I don't know whether we're going to have an event on that day. Well, you need to get over that, and you need to set your rota out in place, and then if you need to make a little adjustment, you have someone on standby, whatever it might be. But I don't think people are asking for more nowadays. There is an expectation that you are going to give them something, though. It's Generation Y we're in now, isn't it? So they've always been told that everyone gets a medal for doing everything, and you're all great at everything, and so on. And it's about there is an expectation that they're going to get all the training, that they're going to get the hours, that they're going to get the promotion. Oh no, I've been in the department 9 months. Can I manage it now? No, you can't. And you need to kind of it's that firm but kind. I'm being firm, but I'm not going to give you that manager position because you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
And that would be unfair on you as an individual. So the downside, though, is if you don't give them the thing, so when you start them off, you say, when you start, you're going to get this, and then you're going to get your 30-day chat, and you're going to get your 90-day chat, and you're going to get this, and you're going to get your anniversary voucher. If they don't get it, then you've lost traction with them straight away. So on top of their staff food being rubbish and the chef shouting at them and so on, they didn't get their 30-day chat, and now they're thinking, well, why should I stay?
And as you grow, you need someone who can monitor all that and obviously make sure it's delivered. Because often the senior management haven't got the time to deliver that.
But really interesting, right? So we've got really, senior people in these positions, and we're senior people, and we think we've got it all covered. And we say, we just can't get round managing everyone's 36-day and 90-day chats because, the chef doesn't do it, and then the front of house man doesn't do it, and then we get too busy and we don't do it. And then one hotel director said, "Oh, it's fine. We just diarise it on the computer." On their first day, and then it pops up the day of or the week before, and everyone sat around the room like,
bingo,
discovered a new planet. It's incredible. But that's why it sort of works. You have to be communicative within the business, and you have to be open to new ideas.
You've talked a bit about mentoring and mentors. How much on-the-job coaching do you do at junior levels as much as middle and senior levels?
I think it's what you want to call coaching. I mean, I think in a friendly and kind working environment, you are naturally coaching. Everything that you say is coaching in a way, isn't it? It's teaching. It's training. We try and ensure that we're training within a structured environment. So, the class was, I told them how to do this. Okay, but where did you tell them and in what sort of structure? As I passed them in the corridor. Oh, okay, right. That's not necessarily a great learning environment. So we try and make sure that we encourage people to talk at appropriate times and understand that to understand what it's like to be trained and not necessarily to be the trainer. Oh, I train them. I'm a really good trainer. It's about how that person took it on board, what they learned. I think we're quite good at all levels. I think probably, if I'm honest, we, rightly or wrongly now I'm thinking about it, we invest more time in that kind of mid-management, not mid-management there, that sort of mid-layer. You might be management, you might not. You might be, excuse my kind of terminology, but a senior CDR, so a senior waiter within a restaurant. But you might not manage, but we think you're probably going to be a manager quite soon, up to supervisor and assistant manager level. We took all of those people out of the business, so 50 of them, and we put them through a 9-month training program where we took them all out of the business. They all came to head office, and we did things like recruitment and retention, managing, all those kinds of things. So we spend quite a lot of time on it. And as much as anything, it's about developing them to help your hotels, but also it aids retention hugely.
And just another thing, I mean, some smaller businesses find this hard because it's expensive, but do you have a referral scheme? So for those in the business, if they refer one of their friends into a role you're looking for, they'll get £100, whatever it might be.
Bang on, exactly that figure. Although we just put it up, actually.
How much is it?
500.
Oh, pretty good.
For chefs.
Okay, and it's on tier system, is it?
200 for the rest.
But it works.
Well, yeah, if you pay £2,500 to an agency fee for a chef, then why not? Yeah, and then chefs all come through agencies now, so,
very good.
Yes, we do.
Is morale, obviously when someone senior leaves, or someone in middle ranking, even junior who's popular, morale's going to be affected. How do you quickly deal with that to stop the morale really hurting the business?
Is morale affected?
Especially if it's someone popular who's going, or going to a rival. How do you sort of mop that up, stop it becoming an issue?
But I think it's under the circumstances that they leave. So if they're leaving for we would never be frustrated that someone's leaving. So the senior housekeeper in Bath just handed in her notice. I brought her to our business from another business, so it's kind of my person. And I was delighted for her that she left. because we couldn't offer her what she wanted, and she's got a great new role. And in that sense, I don't think morale will... In fact, if anything, morale is slightly heightened, increased, heightened, strengthened, whatever it is. Because the rest of the team can see that the business can cope with it and is happy to accept it. I think if someone leaves under a bad cloud, it's about how you manage that. So I'm not quite sure that that's necessarily an issue. And if you sense it's going to be an issue, then you've got to deal with it. I think, again, historically, I'm not speaking for everyone in our industry, we can be great procrastinators. We can leave it right up to the last minute to deal with something, particularly around staffing, if it's been a difficult sort of situation. And I think it's about tackling it head on. And if you sense it's going to be difficult, you're already shoring up those areas beforehand.
Yeah, so often better to tackle straight away.
Yeah.
Seasonal demand is obviously a massive issue. It's big here in Cornwall. How do you tackle that convincingly, and how do you onboard people quickly?
I don't think convincingly would be an effort word that we do with it. Who convincingly here deals with seasonality? I think certainly about being prepared. Again, in our industry, we are so wage specific that none of us want to take on someone 2 or 3 weeks early because they're costing us. We might be doubled up in staff and so on. And that's it's really difficult to suddenly turn on 5 or 6 staff and say, right, you're here tomorrow. And we face that challenge as well. The pig on the beach is probably our hardest one to do. The seasonality really comes in the food and beverage offering, because they do these flatbreads outside and they can serve 300 in a day, and it can really go crazy down there. And also it's very limited in places for people to come and stay. It's £5 each way on the ferry from Bournemouth. The ferry's now closed for 6 weeks, actually. So you're recruiting from Swanage, which is a reasonable recruitment area, but not great. So we try and stay ahead of the game. We try and cultivate old staff. So we have a lot of staff who have gone off to university or gone off and come back for their holidays. And again, we're trying to sort of break down some of the boundaries. We, to our detriment, have been very focused on saying we don't do part-timers. We're a struck business all the way throughout the year, and part-timers don't know what they're doing when they're coming back and forth. And actually, we're finding more and more, so there's a generation Z's coming through now, the 14 and 15-year-olds, those lot, who want to come and pot wash again. They want to come and clean glasses at the weekend, and we're starting to see some of that. So there's no kind of great answer, I'm afraid, for that one. I think it's about ensuring that, particularly people who are in the area, you are their employer of choice when they come home. They know that they can drop into you for a few shifts. Staff accommodation is always a helpful one. Going on to the Brexit word, we used to recruit quite a few stagiaires over from France or Austria. The Austrians are always really good, if any of you are looking for...
Well-trained.
Oh, very good, the Austrians.
So are those numbers dying away?
Yeah.
So you're seeing fewer...
They're not as keen. They're not as... Because there's no security. Because historically, again, when I was at Hotel du Vin, all the sommeliers would come over like that, and they're all still in the UK now. And so there's that, in their mind, they're thinking, I'll go over there for a year, and it's great if I could stay. And actually, everyone's a bit unsure about what's going to happen. So it's that, again, the uncertainty that is causing a lot of people to not take that option. And the French are all going to Spain, a lot of it going to the Far East now as well.
So good news for British workers, because actually they're more likely to get a job, or maybe a higher paid job as well in the UK.
Yes.
In the hospitality industry.
Yes.
But from a productivity point of view, that pushes up the costs for us as business owners.
Yes. I don't see why. I mean, it depends how you employ your staff. We wouldn't pay an English person any more or less than someone from France, and equally, we don't pay if someone is 18 or 22 or 26. So the cut-offs for the minimum wage thing, we pay them all the same. So if you're doing the job, then you do the job. You get paid the money. So I'm not quite sure that necessarily translates. But yeah, I don't know if anyone's got the seasonality thing buttoned down. You can drop me a line and let me know, I think.
When we get some questions, we might ask for your top tips on seasonality.
Yeah, I'll ask questions.
And dealing with that, yeah. Just one question on Brexit, dare I mention it. if there's no deal, and who knows, but if there's no deal, does it mean you're going to find it harder just to expand? Just simply because there isn't the pool of people available.
Just from personnel-wise, it's difficult to expand. The simple answer is probably there will be difficulties. I don't think it becomes a serious problem, but it just becomes a greater problem. The other side to that is, I think we talked about it earlier, is I don't have the kind of bandwidth to be worried about what I don't know about. Even today, we don't know, is it happening, is it not happening, is it with a backstop or not a backstop, or is it this or that, or are EU people coming or going, or so on. And until we have a firm answer, I think we can't, we can come up with sort of role plays in our mind about what's going to happen. So for instance, one of the things we've looked at is for all of our staff who are currently in place, who are EU nationals, we would pay for their for any kind of legal fees and their paperwork, because the paperwork's really, really complicated.
Intensive.
And you get, I think if you make one mistake, it's failed and you have to hand it back and there's another fee that you've got to pay and all of this kind of stuff. And so our commitment would be to say to each of those staff, we would pay for it. And while it sounds a lot of money, I don't think it is. I think that, if you've got a really good member of staff who's been with you 3 years, for instance, why would you not invest, I don't know, £500, £750? Because if they leave, you're going to have to advertise, you're going to have to retrain, you're going to have to get the uniform, you're going to, I don't know, let's say they work in a bar, they're not going to know the bar list, you're going to miss drink sales, all of these kinds of things. And so as an upfront cost, I get it, it sounds a lot of money, and maybe it's not possible, but at the same time, is it possible? What is the alternative?
Now, two other things we were talking about earlier. One was, do uniforms matter for making me more productive in my job?
Yep.
Do they matter? Because obviously the pigs have pretty distinctive uniform policy.
We were, so we haven't planned any of this, but there are a few questions that we bounced back and forth beforehand. But one of the questions was about the uniform. And I sort of laughed and thought, what a ridiculous question. But actually, of course, it's absolutely right. And for us, it's two things. I think the staff do... they'd like to be in a uniform that makes them feel a little bit special and different and whatever it might be. And for those of you who don't know, the pigs, we're pink shirts with a blue tie and jeans and Converse shoes. So they quite like that. I think the other thing is does the uniform work for them? Have we all tried on the staff uniform and worn it for 10 hours straight? And then, have they got enough? We had a situation where all the aprons were rubbing, so we changed all of those out. Their Converse shoes split occasionally, so we buy them new ones. Have they got enough shirts? We're really mean sometimes and say, oh, there's your staff uniform, there's 2 shirts, and then we make them work 5 straight shifts with a day off. When are they supposed to, they're supposed to wash something when they get home. But then the other thing for us is when they become management, they get to get out of their pink shirts. So that's quite often the question. So you sort of them say, yeah, in 6 months' time, I think this is what we give a lot of talks about progression, where we see them in amount of time, because again, that keeps their attention longer. But the first question is never about money. It's about can I get to wear my own shirt?
It's practical. It's practical.
It's always a good one. It's great retention tool, the shirt.
And then how often do you send out your teams, junior levels especially, so they meet the suppliers? Maybe they spend a day on, with a fish in a fish farm, or maybe with a fisherman out there. Yeah. What do you do a lot of that when you're sending them out?
We do loads. So Robin is. He's hugely about all the practical stuff about our industry. What's that? Is that a score? Out of 10?
Yeah.
I've got 5 left.
It's like Strictly.
I was a bit disappointed.
That's Craig Revel-Horwood's score. 5.
All right. I'll be very quick. It's all about the craft. So Robin grew up in it. It's all about working in the environment. So we're very much about craft. We talk about craft the whole time. Robin's always talking about it's people and product. It's not about profit. And actually, very rarely do we ever talk about profit. We really, really don't. So yes, we're always meeting suppliers. We're always going off to places. The wine suppliers have now all started taking us out to the Rhone and Chablis. But it's really, for us, because of our food philosophy about being within 25 miles, we try and make sure that they're seeing all the suppliers locally.
Yeah.